Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Michael with One Eyed Fat Man Studios, and I'm doing this video today to show you some of my techniques. I'm working on Nemesis from the series of books by author Jeremy Robinson. You have Project Nemesis is the name of the book. It's also a comic book, and soon to be a TV series from some of the people behind John Wick. So that's kind of exciting. Now, I made Nemesis once about 5 years ago, and the only thing left of her is this head that I sculpted. And I was like, okay, I hear about them making the show, so I figured it's time to redo her because I could probably do her a little better. Skill level's gone up quite a bit since then. So this is what I've got so far, and as you can see, she's coming along nicely. I've got her nostrils. I just finished doing her nose and putting a lot of the detail around the face, the wrinkles, different creases. You want to bring it in and show her face there. I did her dentures, her tongue, her gums, everything of that. The fingernails, all that is done out of Kato polyclay. These pieces are done out of Sculpting 3, and this is I don't know what this is, what color it is. You see it on there anywhere?
It's translucent.
Translucent. Does not work as well as the Kato polyclay, but the place that I normally get the Kato is out of it, so I had to go with something else. That being said, Nemesis is what could be referred to as the first real American kaiju. The books predate Pacific Rim, if I'm not mistaken. Kong could be considered an American kaiju. The 98 Godzilla doesn't count because it's an American version of Godzilla. There have been other giant monsters, but in the vein of Godzilla, I would have to say myself, I do believe that Nemesis is the first of the American kaiju that was genuinely unique. Without spoiling the book, Nemesis is created in a lab. She's fused with a dead Japanese girl, and chaos ensues from there. So if you like the books, you can find them on Amazon, or if you have a Kindle, just type in the name Jeremy Robinson and Project Nemesis, and it'll pull up. I think there are 5 or 6 books. I've not read the last book. But what I'm doing right now is I'm looking at different photos of Nemesis done by different artists and kind of coming up with my own version of what she should look like. Now, most of the pictures you're going to find on her are done by artist Matt Frank. Matt Frank did a lot of the Godzilla books. For IDW, he's done other comic books, other illustrations. So I wanted to kind of stay faithful to that, but I also wanted to give it a bit of a more unique turn. So what I'm going to do on her is, as I work on her, I'm going to give, and she is a female, by the way. She has another form after this. But I want to show you all kind of how I'm building this. As I work on her hands and I detail her hands, I take her hands off. Of course, this is Kato polyclay, it's baked. And I go in and I do the detail work and then put the hand back on. So say I wanted to do some kind of pattern here, and this little bit of flesh that we have right here is more webbed in Nemesis. So we kind of just cut that, know where we're going, because it has to go all the way around. So this is just an X-Acto knife. Just marking out what I need. And if I stop talking, I will try to come back and tell you what I've done, because a lot of times I'll get kind of quiet when I'm sculpting and just focus on the sculpt. So one of the things you want to do is, if you're using something like monster clay, it's very forgivable. I personally don't like the way Sculpey feels when you sculpt with it. A lot of the polymer clays get way too sticky, and it just feels weird to me. Now we're going to take a different tool that's got an edge on it, very similar. It's not sharp, it's just a flat edge. And we just kind of go around here in a bit of a, just give it a bit of a turn. Now, unlike the blade, it will actually mark over where we've cut. So we'll go back in on this side and just kind of redo it. And you're just doing it lightly. And kind of get that design pattern in there. And then we're coming back on this side and we do the same thing. Now I could use the X-Acto knife, but it could cut through where it's real thin up here, so I don't use it, because the more you cut into it, the more the clay gets, the integrity of the clay gets messed up, and then you have to worry about cutting through it, and then I have to re-sculpt it and everything else. So I've kind of done that, and then what I'm going to do is just take my finger and kind of press into it, and it takes away some of the overt tool marks. It'll take me a bristled, firm bristled toothbrush and kind of run over it a little bit, just giving it a bit more damage, weathering. As with, you know, we watch Godzilla movies and stuff and we forget that Godzilla walks through buildings and gets hit by missiles and tank rounds, and even though they don't show it a lot, Godzilla does get a lot of damage to the old body from one of his incursions into Tokyo. Now, as you know, there's not a whole lot of real straight lines in nature, so then we come back in here and we just kind of go through and just sort of mark this up to give it a more natural look. We do it on the bottom, just in different places, and go through. And you can do this with different tools. You don't have to use the same ones I've got. So then we've got that webbing in between Nemesis thumb and forefinger. And then I put it back on. This one's going to be kind of a, this hand will be kind of more, kind of like she's fixing to turn around a corner, doing that looking and turning, and her arms coming back, and this one's coming out with a step. And if you look at where I'm doing her feet, instead of having her legs in that position, I've found keeping them in a bit more stable, firmly planted position, that I don't have to worry about going and doing multiple types of wires, so she will retain her stability. That's what happened to this one. I had her basically just standing there like this, and because of the way the legs and the wire was done, she began to slowly collapse. I mean, her claws were about this far from the tabletop, and eventually they were touching. And I didn't use any poly clay. I believe I just used regular armature wire that I bought at Jerry's Artorama. And it was about, what, a year later that we noticed that she was collapsing. So, that being said, I kind of refer to my pictures here and figure out, okay, what am I doing now? Okay, so Nemesis has, she does have some kind of armor that they show. What do you need? Speak.
I have to use brick and
This is my son. He's sculpting too. He's sculpting, I believe, Godzilla over there.
It's Godzilla.
So, I'm going to show him his Godzilla. There's his Godzilla. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this clay here. It's still real warm, so it's going to work really well going through the pasta maker. This is thinner for different types of scale. I've really rolled it out and made it extremely thin so I can do this stuff on the feet and on the arms. some of this other scaled armor, I have to do a little bit thicker because I want it to look better than it does.
Can we use this?
Yes, you can. So we kind of just roll this out with a regular clay roller, get it a little bit thinner so it doesn't gunk up the pasta maker. And you can buy one of these at Michael's. Most hobby stores if they carry clay, a lot of them are going to have this particular type of pasta maker. You could probably buy a food safe pasta maker with a plastic roller in it and actually do some stuff there. So I've got that rolled out. Like I said, that's real warm, so I'm going to let it sit there and cool off a little bit. And your clay is real liquid, so be careful putting your hand in it. Okay?
Okay.
So, let me move on to marking out for the scales or the ridges on the fingers. So we kind of look, and I come through and I figure out how many layers I want on the larger fingers, taking into consideration where the knuckle is and just marking it out with just a regular clay tool. So we've got 4 lines that we put on it. So now this middle finger is a little shorter than the forefinger here. You don't have to have 4 layers on each finger. They're different sizes, so you can do different layers, different designs. So this one's going to have 3, and then this one here will probably have 2. This little finger here. And we just kind of mark out where it's going to be. Then we go to the thumb. The thumb we're going to do 3. And when I do my scales on the hands like that, I don't have the scales come down around the bottom of the hand or the palm of the hand. So we kind of mark those out where we have them. And then we decide exactly what kind of scale pattern we want to use. Now you can do a tool and you can carve this in. You take a tool like this, and can you see that? And we kind of go in here, and where we made that line, I'm just going to kind of push into the clay. Okay, I'm going to do this whole forefinger here, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. We make this a lot deeper with this tool, and we're doing it at an angle to kind of lift the clay up. So you lift that clay up because you're going to have those scales be layered to a point. Okay, so I've done that, figuring how far down that it needs to go on either side. And you just lift a little, not a whole lot. You don't want to lift a whole lot. Then you take one of these paint erasers that I use in the place of silicone shapers, and you put it in there, and you kind of lift real on the edge, just the edge. Okay, don't get too far down in there. That also pushes some of the clay in and helps to reform the finger, but also it gives you a bit more control than something that's a thin blade. Like right there, I actually went too deep. So we're going to have to go in at a different angle on that and kind of repair that. But then if you look at it and see what I've done, I've lifted those up and kind of given those a layered appearance. Then we go back into the finger itself and push the excess clay back down into where you cut it originally and you stuck the tool to make it look like it's laying on top of each the previous row of the finger, the flesh of the finger. And then when you're done, you have this nice little scaled pattern like so. But then we have, okay, the scales just don't stop. So we come over at an angle. Probably want to use this tool.
I'm gonna go get a treat.
We kind of draw that line on each side, the finger, and Greg, you want to go out there with him? Then we come back in with the tool that's kind of angled to give us that angle. And okay, there's that. And we've brought that around. Now the more you handle monster clay, the warmer it's going to get. So you got to be careful when you're working with really small pieces, because your clay will get way too warm and you'll have to deal with it on that point. So you want to be real careful when you're doing stuff. So, and then there we go. And then of course we'll do scales on the rest of the hand. So what you've got is a pattern that is basically a U shape for these scales, and you can go back in and detail them with different tools and stuff, whatever you feel looks best, and you just keep doing that until you get it to the place where you're comfortable with it. And you may not want to do this kind of scaling pattern, you may want to do a different scaling pattern. But that kind of gives you the idea of the scale pattern I'm talking about. You see it okay? And then you can put it on, and then of course you want to work that scale pattern into however you have it go across the hand, to whether it's, you know, just one multi layer of armored scales or individual scales. So that really gives you an idea of what you're doing and how to do it real quickly. So don't be afraid of trying different things. One thing you can do is practice different scales in a piece of clay. You know, okay, I want something a little bit sharper. So maybe make a V and then come in and figure out, okay, how would that look if it was on a finger, and would it work well? You can do it on a piece of paper. I find doing it in clay gives me a better idea of how it's going to look at the end result, so it's a little bit better than just drawing something out. I don't do a whole lot of drawing things out, but that's where she's at right now. So what we're working on is Nemesis from Project Nemesis by Jeremy Robinson. If you can, check out the books. You can get those on Amazon. You can get them on Kindle. I'm not for sure if they're in hardback or paperback. They probably are. And there's also a comic book called Project Nemesis with Matt Frank doing the covers. So check those out. Look forward to the TV show, and I'll be back with you later on this week with even some more stuff worked on Project Nemesis. Check us out on Facebook. Of course, check us out on Instagram and Twitter. You can find us under One-Eyed Fat Man Studios. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you want to. And if you have any suggestions, let us know, and check us out on Patreon. And as always, I'll catch you next time.